Hi, I've been using switches for about 5 years in schools, and I'm pretty sure they'll be very important to lots of people who work with musicians who have physical disabilities that stop them from accessing regular instruments. I've got a switch here plugged into a crick hub, which can turn those switch presses into keyboard presses. But one common use for switches would be also using them with Soundbeam. And I want to show you a few ways I use switches and Notion to make music. And here we've got the program Notion, which is a notation program, but it also has a performance aspect to it called the end tempo line. And here you can see we've got some piano chords, which sound like this. Very dramatic. And I would like to play these with a switch. Now in Notion we have an extra stave we can add called an end tempo line. And you can see that here. I've got my piano stave and I've got what's called an end tempo stave, and this is controlled by keyboard shortcuts or by MIDI input from say switches. And when I have it set up here, if I add in a semi-breve, then for every time a switch is pressed, I'm going to get 1 bar. And the way we set that up is in Preferences. I beg pardon. The way we set that up is in MIDI device commands. If we were using MIDI, here we have all the performance options that we can map a MIDI note to. In this case, I'm using the crick hub, which is acting as a keyboard. And if we see here, my switch presses are going to be pressing the return key. In Notion, that return key is vamp, which will play all the material between 2 repeat marks. So here we have the material again, and let's try playing it with a switch. And now you see I've got control over the timing of playing. But we might want to also use this to play other instruments in either Logic or Ableton Live. And to do that, we need to use something called the IAC bus, which is a Mac program. We get it through Audio MIDI Setup, and we need to open this IAC driver here. If you've never used this before, you'll have to make this device online with this little tick box, and we can essentially make as many virtual MIDI ports as we like. I've got 4 here, and you can name them whatever you like. Now once you have these set up, in Notion we can go to Preferences, MIDI I/O, and set our output to this virtual MIDI. And this is just sending MIDI to any other program on the computer that you like. And to get this sending MIDI to another program, we need to go to Score Setup, which is this icon up here. Let's just move that so you can see. Click the little gear, and we have options for instruments, and we want to go external MIDI. And we're just going to keep that on channel 1 for now. So now, if we exit Score Setup, you can see that when I press the switch, you don't hear anything. Because at the moment, there's nothing to play. There's no instrument loaded in live, which is what I'll be using for this tutorial. So why don't we load a piano sound? Find one here. Okay, we have our piano there. And if we have the monitor set to auto and the record enabled, now when we press the switch, we hear our piano sound. And then we have all the options in Ableton Live to record and to loop. But we can also do some more interesting things to add some rhythm to this, which involve using the arpeggiator. And this is a MIDI effect in live. And it essentially takes chords and turns them into arpeggios. So now, if we launch that again, if I hit so we have that going. We can change the rate. We can change the way it's playing. We could maybe add some range. And we could shorten the notes a little. And we could maybe bring the volume down. So now we have a nice muted, continuous rhythmic pattern going. And with the press of a switch we can change the notes. And so that's one way you can take some relatively simple material that can be triggered by just a switch and play it in a few different ways. You can either use the switch as a straightforward chord trigger, in the way some of you might be used to doing with Soundbeam, or you can use the arpeggiator to make it more rhythmic and have that as a backing for other musicians. Thanks.